Bonus demografi yang akan dialami Indonesia harus bisa dimaksimalkan untuk membawa ke masa Indonesia Emas tahun 2045, di mana Indonesia diprediksi lembaga keuangan dunia IMF akan menjadi negara dengan ekonomi terkuat keempat di dunia setelah Tiongkok, India, dan Amerika Serikat. Nah, lalu bagaimana cara Indonesia dapat mendorong kreativitas dan inovasi teknologi digital khususnya untuk bisa mencapai Indonesia Emas 2045? Insight akan membahasnya bersama saya, Desi Anwar.
Penguasaan ilmu pengetahuan dan teknologi menjadi kunci untuk membangun kekuatan daya saing Indonesia. Teknologi digital seperti kecerdasan artifisial atau AI perlu dimanfaatkan sebagai medium yang mampu mengakselerasi pertumbuhan negara menjadi negara maju. Terlebih lagi, Indonesia saat ini memiliki potensi pengembangan begitu besar dengan adanya bonus demografi yang tercipta 2 dekade terakhir. AI merupakan suatu kekuatan baru di dunia. Mengembangkan AI sama dengan meningkatkan kekuatan suatu negara. Bahkan kini negara-negara besar dunia saling berlomba untuk bisa menciptakan teknologi AI tercanggih. Di Indonesia, pengembangan AI juga menjadi perhatian khusus, sebab AI dinilai dapat mendorong percepatan transformasi digital di tanah air. Transformasi digital bahkan masuk RPJMN periode 2020-2024. Saat ini pengembangan AI di Indonesia diprioritaskan pada 5 sektor utama, yaitu sektor kesehatan, reformasi birokrasi, pendidikan dan riset, ketahanan pangan, serta mobilitas dalam mewujudkan smart city.
Penguasaan ilmu, pengetahuan, dan teknologi tentu saja menjadi kunci untuk membangun kekuatan daya saing agar bangsa Indonesia terus maju dan berkembang sesuai dengan cita-cita bangsa Indonesia. Nah, teknologi digital perlu dimanfaatkan oleh Indonesia sebagai medium yang mampu mengakselerasi pertumbuhan negara menjadi negara maju. Terlebih di Indonesia saat ini kita memiliki potensi pengembangan yang begitu besar dengan adanya bonus demografi yang tercipta 2 dekade terakhir. Lalu bagaimana peran penguasaan teknologi dalam membentuk sumber daya manusia Indonesia dalam mencapai tujuan visioner Indonesia Emas 2045? Sudah ada di studio bersama saya seorang tokoh terkemuka di dunia akademis dan bisnis yang juga merupakan CEO, Presiden, dan Dekan Asia School of Business, Professor Sanjay Sarma. Professor Sarma, good to have you with us.
Such a pleasure, Desi.
And it's, you know, we talk about technology now, we talk about AI, we talk about everything, you know, the Internet of Things. And it's just very much a part of our life. And it's very much a part of, you know, in my line of business. I started 30 years ago when we just had like a TV and an analog television. Now everybody, they can create their own television. So when we talk about the evolution and technology, and I mean, given your background, your stellar academic qualification, you're a mechanical engineer, you're a professor at MIT, and now you are the dean of Asia Business School in Malaysia. Tell us a little bit, about where you see all this technological revolution is going to, and where are we in terms particularly of the AI revolution?
You know, I'm not a huge fan of Winston Churchill, but I'll quote him. This is just not even the end of the beginning, really. This is the beginning of the beginning. Our technology has started accelerating. It started accelerating during World War II, then it started accelerating at the end of the 20th century, and now it's on an incredible path. Mm-hmm. And there's so many fronts. Just imagine if COVID had occurred 15 years ago.
Yeah.
The world would have shut down. But mRNA vaccines, fast vaccine development, internet, they saved us. But if it's the internet, it could be biotech, it could be the Internet of Things, it could be controls, it could be telecommunications, 5G, and of course now things like artificial intelligence. What's happening right now is that there's a momentum of its own, and society is absorbing much of it. Much of it is good, Not all of it is good. For example, we could argue that social media hasn't been generally good, right? It's caused polarization. It's, you know, young people are absorbed
It's
into it.
causing also mental health problems.
Mental health problems, addictions. So I think we're at a very important juncture where society and technology have to come to grips with each other. The technology is being pushed because it's, you can sell it. But I think we have to collectively think about how technology and society can work together from a policy perspective, from a philosophy perspective, from an education perspective. It's not that different from climate change. We're having our judgment day is coming, and we better get to work in understanding, absorbing, and discussing it.
Okay, and in terms of where it's going, is there, you know, with technology, we don't know what's going to happen. For example, when the Wright brothers, you know, they started with their flying machine. Now we have, you know, rockets and going to Mars, for example. But in our technology, is there sort of like a clear path that can we all agree on where this should take us and where we should be careful?
I don't think there's a clear path, unfortunately. I mean, I think you and I could agree, right? We want these things to be generally beneficial to society. We want, you know, when Google was founded, the founder said, do no evil. By the way, they removed that later. We want things to be generally better for people. But there are so many independent parties pushing each of these fronts with good intentions, but the coordination is missing. And my concern is that society is going to suddenly find itself going, oh my God, what's going on? Just as we have with social media, right? I mean, who thought social media, this little thing, you know, would be a bad thing? But look at, you know, the way in which it's affected young people. Look at the way in which it's polarized society. So is there a direction? Is there an end state? Well, I mean, some of us can talk about it, but it doesn't mean we're going to go there. Ideally, we want to be in a place where people are healthier and happier, right? And society and the planet can survive and do well. But I'm not sure that this uncoordinated approach will lead to it. So we just need to have these conversations and shape it a little bit and say that, you know, that's not okay. You know, my privacy is important. Keeping people employed is important. And these conversations aren't occurring at the strategic level they ought to. In addition, the world is very multipolar now, right? I mean, you have Indonesia, which is a big country, but then you have America, and you have India, and you have China, and you have Russia.
With all their vested interests.
Yeah, so these conversations are not easy, and I don't think they're occurring at the level they ought to.
Okay, in terms of the technology itself, the tools, I mean, we would like technology to be a tool. It's ideally, for example, AI, artificial intelligence, you know, we are working with it already, you know, the algorithms and so on. But at some point, you know, when does it become a tool, and when does it become sort of like a peer or perhaps even something else? Tell us a little bit about the AI and the evolution to AGI, the generative intelligence, and what should we be aware and what should we need to understand? Because a lot of us don't understand how these things work, about, you know, when machines start learning and they can start doing things without our telling them what to do.
You know, let's take a simpler technology, Google Maps. I used it today to figure out what the traffic was. I use it all the time. It's actually hurt my sense of direction. The crutch is beginning to replace the leg. It's supposed to be a crutch, it's supposed to help you, but over time the tool takes over. With artificial intelligence, this new way, which is generative AI, Gen AI as it's called, that's large language models, ChatGPT, all these things. Early days, as I said, the beginning of the beginning. There's a point at which it becomes very intelligent, and that's called artificial general intelligence, AGI. We're not there yet. Some people confuse that with sentience, and that's even a further way away. But just large language models with the intelligence they provide, they can have a very significant impact on society. Now, you asked a more philosophical question, which is, you know, I'm really talking about will it affect jobs? You're asking a more philosophical question, which is at what point does it take over our volition? And that is the question of agency. At what point does AI become so smart that human beings lose agency, where it's doing things for you, where you're actually getting orders from it rather than you giving it orders, where it starts controlling something that affects your life? You know, you could argue that some of that's beginning to happen already. AGI is a further step when it's generally intelligent, when it can think, plan, have volition, things like that. It's not sentience, but it's a step further. But even before that, we have to worry about our losing agency. It'll start in the periphery. So, for example, you may have an elder care facility where you have an AI system that, asks an 87-year-old gentleman, now it's time for you to go to the bathroom. Now it's time for you to get your treatment. But that's an AI system telling that person. Are we comfortable with that? Well, if it helps a person, maybe. But maybe the person still has
their own desires.
Their desires, and it's being overwhelmed. So that's where it'll start in the peripheries. And we are very close to that right now. So it's queasy. It's very queasy. I feel very uncomfortable.
So, okay, let's take a little break, Sanjay, because we still do have a lot of to talk about, particularly in its everyday application. Education, I think, is an important place to start of where we can see AI and generative AI can really make a difference. Tetaplah bersama kami, Insight with Desi Anwar akan segera kembali. Kembali bersama Insight with Desi Anwar, saya masih ditemani CEO, Presiden dan Dekan Asia School of Business, Professor Sanjay Sarma. Dan Sanjay, in my introduction, I talk a little bit also about in Indonesia, we have a vision called Indonesia, the golden era of Indonesia 2045. Why 2045? Because by then we'll be 100 years, our independence. And in order to do that, obviously, the most important thing is getting our people, our human capital, ready to embrace that golden era. And obviously, we need everything to prepare our young people. Education is a very, very significant and crucial part in that journey. Tell us, AI, technology, Internet of Things, digital transformation, how will it impact our education system, and how can we leverage those tools to actually go in the direction that we want, which is, smart, caring, compassionate, intelligent people who can solve problems?
Every country is different. I think Indonesia has many advantages. One of them is the demographic dividend. Indonesia is sort of a middle-income country. Of course, you confront certain challenges like climate change, 17,000 islands, a huge coastline that's affected. And Indonesia has another sort of interesting advantage. AI, interestingly, is going to impact rich economies more than middle and lower income economies. The reason is that more knowledge-based jobs will be impacted by AI. There's something called, there's a Moravec's paradox, which is what is easy for human beings is difficult for AI. What is difficult for human beings is easy for AI. It's a switch. So AI is going to affect perhaps the US and Europe more, and maybe the coders in India, than it will people working in farming, in palm oil production, in fishing. It'll impact
in labor-intensive jobs.
More labor-intensive, but also more having to do with nature, right? More having to do with hands and brains. But if the hands part AI isn't figured out, that's robotics. That revolution hasn't occurred. So I think actually Indonesia has a great opportunity. IoT means that we'll be much better custodians and stewards of the environment. We will water less and waste water less because we're more precise in our agriculture. We will pollute less because our factories and all the emissions will be better controlled. The lights in rooms will go off because IoT will tell you that there's no one there, turn the lights off. We'll become much better stewards. And so there's a huge revolution coming. And of course, you're building a new capital, and you can do it right. You can do it with the most modern principles. There are a lot of buildings, a lot of cities ignore. It's a huge opportunity. The challenge is talent. Now, every child is born a genius. This is something, after years and years and years of thinking about it, research, every child is an Albert Einstein. Yeah. We have to let that flourish. Culture, society, they shape children. We tell them what to do, what not to do. And I think we have a real opportunity to do two things. One is, but also it's an urgency, rethink the education system. This is something I've thought a lot about. The other issue is folks who are in the working world they need to retrain and upskill. Because climate change means that the way we do everything is going to change. AI means that the way we do everything is going to change. IoT means there are new opportunities. So education to me is the magic elixir that makes the demographic dividend actually pay off. The demographic dividend has to be mixed with education to make it what it could truly be. And I think that's Indonesia's opportunity and challenge, frankly.
Okay, well, we've seen during COVID, and it's sort of like a prototype of what technology and education can do. You have, you know, through the Zoom, and you know, everybody with their sort of tablets, and they can conduct classes and so on and so forth. I mean, it may not make for a very happy or pleasant experience for a child learning, but education is obviously something that needs to be transformed, revolutionized. It used to be the teacher is the reservoir of all this knowledge. You know, the teacher has the answer. But now the student can just Google everything and they can do their own research. What will or what should an education that is very much bound with technology take an advantage of all the good things that technology can offer, including, you know, AI and with the ChatGPT and so on? What should school look like?
Look, I think the way we've designed our education systems, mostly inherited from Europe, right? And Europe, the Europeans inherited them going back 1,000 years from the Middle East. The education system isn't designed from scratch. It's something we just inherited. We do it this way because it was convenient.
But it's no longer relevant.
And it's not relevant. And the reason is the education system, the way we educate today is fundamentally flawed. Let me explain why. It is based on a fallacy that the professor, this reservoir of knowledge, has the pen, and the student's brain is a sheet of paper. And all the professor has to do is write on that sheet of paper, do an exam and declare victory. And that's wrong. I said earlier that every child is a genius. You see, what's actually happening is every child is building a model of the world. They're exploring something. We have turned it upside down and made it convenient to the professor, not to the child. Actually, a better model for education, learning, is what a parent does with their child. You're a coach, you're a nurturer, you answer questions, you have fun, right? And by the way, the same instinct carries to adulthood as well. If you turn it around and make it learner-centric, thank God for all these other things, Google, because the child can get the information. The teacher then has to become the coach, the inspirer, the person who really garners curiosity, creates projects, and puts the learner, adult or child, in a model where they're doing stuff constructive with the knowledge. So this reversal will require a pretty fundamental change. If you watch, for example, Sal Khan, Khan Academy, he's talked about it, MIT, and that's what I did for a decade with our colleagues. That's actually in my book as well.
And you have your book here, The Science Transforming How We Learn.
Right. And it's got to be...
How should we transform?
We should turn the classroom into a studio, into a workshop, into a field study. Let the student consume lectures with videos, like Khan Academy, or in fact at the Asia School of Business, we're launching something called Agile Continuous Education, where the student can actually watch videos and then interact with a system that's AI and other technologies where they're actually practicing. But when they enter the classroom, when we have the privilege of being together, which remember nature confiscated from us during COVID, let's make it count. And that means at that time, the student has to be a creator, a problem solver, not listening passively to the professor droning on, which is what I'm doing right now, right? So we have to reverse the classroom, and it's called a flipped classroom, literally.
Okay, but what does it take? I mean, look, currently in our education system in Indonesia, you have, you know, curriculum, set curriculum. These are the subjects that every child has to learn. It's da, maybe, I don't know, it's like a laundry list of them. And then this is sort of the output. You know, they have to pass these exams in order to go up, you know, and then, you know, they are judged, you know, the whole future is basically judged on these little pieces of paper that they collect as they go up, you know, whether it's a, you know, elementary school, junior, and then senior high, and then university. how do we change that? How do we transform that? I mean, it's a huge task.
It's a huge
and,
task.
And how can we leverage technology to accelerate that?
Yeah, it's a huge task. I wish after COVID, we learned our lesson. The problem with COVID was it was the worst of both worlds. We took the lecture and put it on Zoom, which is even worse, right? What we should do is do videos, which students can watch at their own time, have AI systems and other systems that they interact with, but then the classroom has to be flipped and become a studio. This requires massive teacher retraining. But we've been working on this, so all the techniques are known. 15, 20 years, this has been a mission of mine and many others. The techniques are known. It takes a lot of courage from governments to do this. So there are now at MIT, a lot of classrooms are run like that, where you do projects. Now MIT is a big, rich university, we can do it. But unfortunately, we're at a juncture where we have to transform the education system, shake off the shackles of tradition and the systems that are being imposed on us, and go to a much more practical system. You know, look, 200 years ago, no one went to school. You went and learned from your parents. That's how you learned.
We have the same here. For example, people have children, so that to help them, you know, the extra hands working in the farms, for example, you know. So
and they learn, right? They learn how to become good farmers.
And they learn to, and it's all, everything's vocational, you know, and you have this apprenticeship, you know, if your father's a carpenter, and then, you know, you sort of carry on, so everybody has skills. Now, talking about skills, like I said, you know, set curriculums, you have to do this. What would you say would be the best curriculum for of the future that would take us to that golden era of 2040? What things should children learn at school that will help them?
Math remains important, all right? Let's not kid ourselves. History is important. As George Santayana said, if you ignore history, you're destined to report it. There are many topics that remain important, but a lot of things have become somewhat irrelevant. The way we teach is equally important. What I would do is create math videos, have students watch it, have AI system to interact with it in the classroom. I would have them use the math to solve real problems. Look at the national economy. Why did, understand what GDP is, build an accounting system, practice additions and multiplications there, divisions, learn to pay your taxes. That's a great way to learn math.
Life skills.
Life skills. You see, apprenticeship isn't as bad as we make it sound. We've taken away the practicality of apprenticeship, replaced it with this laundry list, and it's not authentic. And then it's like a hot dog eating contest. You take an exam, you pass and say you're done, but you actually didn't learn. This is what we're finding.
Well, this is what we're finding, that every year 3 million young Indonesians, they graduate, they're very proud with their toga and everything, and they go straight into the unemployment line because their skills are not something that the industry.
And the exams are not authentic. So what do? You teach math and you create an exam which tests along the lines that you taught, which may be not authentic. So an authentic assessment is not that you can pass the exam. It is that you can use your math to pay your taxes. It is that you can use your math to account for your business. So there's these practical skills which can happen in a studio environment. So the classroom has to become a studio where you bring in apprenticeship.
Has to become a studio, in which case, let's see, what are the important components that we need in the studio? And of course, it's all about the infrastructure. It's all about the funding. And this is all about, the knowledge that goes with it. We'll take another little break, Sanjay, but do stay with us. Jangan kemana-mana dulu, Insight with Desi Anwar akan segera kembali. Masih bersama Insight with Desi Anwar. Di studio saya ditemani Presiden dan Dekan Asia School of Business, Profesor Sanjay Sarma, dan kita berbincang mengenai pendidikan apa yang perlu kita siapkan bagi khususnya anak-anak muda kita sehingga Indonesia bisa mencapai Indonesia Emas pada tahun 2045. Apa saja bentuk pendidikan dan juga skills maupun keterampilan yang dibutuhkan. Sanjay, it means that there has to be a different way of assessing the students themselves. Now, I like the fact that, I agree with you. Every child is born a genius. I mean, it's amazing. They're so creative and they're just, the imagination is completely limitless, and these are all full of ideas, and these are the kinds of ingredients we need to make a genius. And then we put them to school, and then they become like everybody else, and then you take the shine out of them, and they become sort of like you say, fodder for the industry. It's sad, isn't it? But it's no longer working, obviously. How do we assess them? Because exams are still, you learn, you memorize, you check the box, the multiple choice, you write the essays according to, preset answers. How do we assess these students?
When I was in college, we had a quiz. The quiz show did something that we all thought was very unfair. Rather than asking a question, India is big into quizzes, right? Like general knowledge. He blindfolded the participants and gave them three different desserts, asked them to taste it, and told them to guess what it was. And everyone thought it was unfair. And I thought, my God, that's so profoundly fair. If you really know what your dessert is, you should be able to guess by tasting it. That is an authentic assessment, right? And inauthentic assessment would have been, what is the national dessert of Bengal? But that's just at a surface level. This was deep. True assessment, unfortunately, we don't do through exams, because we exam what can be tested easily, not what needs to be tested. With AI, we finally have a secret. We can actually go towards more true assessments. We can give students open-ended problems and have them solve them, because life is open-ended.
Yeah.
We have limited our assessments to very tight, closed-ended problems that you can quickly do a multiple choice check on. Life is open-ended. AI suddenly becomes an ally. With AI, you can have young people do slightly more open-ended things and give them assessments. And teachers can do subjective assessments. We try and shy away from subjective, but life is subjective. So these are two massive trends that are happening. In fact, in COVID, there was this movement, replace the final exam with the grand finale, where you do something and feel great about it and you're judged on it, like a project.
But then they said, well, does my child, did they get good grades, bad grades? Does he fail? Or is everybody a winner out of this?
Well, this is the challenge. The challenge is...
Because that's what school, it sort of, separates the ones that will be a success in later life from the rest who maybe only got C's and D's in there.
You see, unfortunately, this is why the system is so hard to change, because the whole system up the pipeline, including the parents, want their kids to get good grades, get into the next step, get a job, get married, have kids, and move on, right? But the world's going to change very much. With AI, it is my argument, not everyone agrees with me, they're going to see massive unemployment. They're going to have to see massive reskilling. There'll need to be a lot more entrepreneurship. There's going to be a lot more creativity exercised by people, because AI will do the uncreative stuff. And so unfortunately, we're in this catch-22. If you change, then the parents and the system is not ready. If you don't change, you're barreling down towards a cliff where the entire employment landscape and the skill landscape is changing. And this is where leadership comes in. Right? And maybe one place to start is with adult education. That's where you practice this first and then move down.
Let's talk about the teachers, because you said, ideally, in the future, the class will be a studio. What is the role of the teachers? What do they need to learn? And basically, a lot of teachers, are they going to be unemployed?
I don't think so. I think that, so my mother was a teacher. By the way, teaching schools are called normal schools, as you probably know, right? They're called normal schools because they were based on norms. That's where the term comes from. Good teachers, great teachers, we all remember our great teachers, are actually life coaches. And I actually think they have the capability of doing that. You need to give them the freedom to do it. Now, because a big change is difficult, keep the grading going, keep that going, but start emphasizing projects in the classwork. Ask students to write reports. Ask students to do, for example, open-ended exercises. And slowly sort of let that grow in, because to make a sudden change is very difficult.
But how do you train the teachers to be able to do that? They're so used to standing in front of the class and then, with all the answers, and maybe this is something that the teacher training.
I think teacher training is essential to this. I mean, they are your conduits. There are two pieces to this. One is, I do think that our curricula are overpacked with stuff. We have a lot of stuff that can be removed. There's a tendency to add more and more, but we don't pay attention to the fact that the students actually don't get it. So we need to be a little bit more judicious in what we ask students to teach, create a little bit of headroom, and then encourage teachers to do open-ended projects. For example, make sure there's a field trip. Make sure that students take on open-ended projects, and that starts with teacher training. So I do believe that you've got to start with a massive teacher training effort. And remember I said adult education is a place to start. Teachers are adults. I would start with teacher training and then also working adults in different companies on topics like AI and sustainability. I would start there, including teachers, and then go down to the younger ages. But if you hit teachers first, if they're freed up, by the way, teachers in my view have generally good instincts. They sort of know, what works and doesn't. So if you give them a little bit of freedom, I'm actually quite optimistic that teachers will respond.
Okay, and the thing is with Indonesia, I mean, we're huge. We're over 275 million, and teachers don't come sort of where the high income brackets. Normally they, they're underpaid, and the schools are underfinanced, and the bad infrastructure, and but without teachers, we can't do it. I mean, I still remember my favorite teachers. They play such an important role. And yet, how do you think that we should incentivize them to, because this is an extra mile that they're being asked to do, come up with your own ideas and so on and so forth. It's so much easier to just, do everything based on what's there and teach them, pass on the knowledge. Is there a best practice that you can share with us for a country like Indonesia?
Yeah, look, I think that the next road, the next highway, might seem like a tangible asset, but to really make the demographic dividend pay off, teaching is more important than the next highway. And my view is that it'll take a lot of wisdom for a country like this, Indonesia, to say, we will invest in the next generation. I mean, imagine, will.i.am, the musician from the Black Eyed Peas, had a quote that I just saw today, in which he says, we are investing all this money in teaching machines. I wish we could invest it in teaching human beings. Indonesia, with its youthful population, has a real opportunity. Maybe forego the next highway and educate the teachers, because the teachers, it'll raise their salaries. The Scandinavian countries have actually done that. Finland, Sweden, and I think there's a real model there. And if you focus on PISA scores, etc., although it's an objective metric,
we're always at the bottom when it comes to
so
PISA.
invest in that for a start, right? And then give the teachers the freedom to do a little bit more open-ended stuff, and you've created a generation that will pay off in 30 years. The question is, who has the incentive to invest 30 years out?
Yep, absolutely. And what if just everything is on ChatGPT? Maybe we don't even need teachers anymore.
No, I do think we do. I mean, look, what will happen with AI is that the more tedious jobs will go away. Unfortunately, right now, we're training people to do the tedious jobs, as you said earlier, right? So we've got to teach young people to do the jobs that AI can't do. And that circle will widen. And then we need to get students to do more and more stuff on the outside. Even current employees will have to move away from the bullseye. The bullseye where AI lands is the stuff that is easy, that is very, very tedious. And we've got to push people out, and that is re-education.
Okay, well, let's identify what bits, we should parcel off to the AIs and what's left for us humans, because this will also be, an existential question at some point for us, what's our purpose, what can we do, and much better than what machines can do. Let's take another little break. Inside with Desi Anwar akan segera kembali. Kembali bersama Inside with Desi Anwar, saya ditemani CEO, Presiden dan Dekan dari Asia School of Business, Profesor Sanjay Sarma. Terima kasih atas kehadirannya. Did you understand that?
Yes, I did.
Terima kasih. Kita masih membahas pentingnya peran pendidikan dalam kehidupan masa depan di tengah perkembangan teknologi, tapi juga ini pasti ada dampaknya terhadap dunia kerja. Technology in the workplace, technology in business. Let me just, I get quite philosophical Sanjay, because I think at some point this is going to be sort of an existential question. The way that the world goes round at the moment, what makes the world go round? It's money. The economy was. We divide between the successful and the non-successful, the developed and the non-developed, is on things like the GDP, the size of their economy, the things that they produce, the things that they manufacture. These are numbers. We don't sort of judge them by who's happiest, who is healthiest, who has the best attitude to life, and so on. But then these, number crunching is what AI is very good at. What would be, the jobs of the future for us humans when, for example, everything that's repetitive, which is everything, when we manufacture something, we repeat. There is an algorithm. It's the step by step. When we produce something, there is a process. And these can be taken over by AI. What should be for AI and generative AI? What should be for humans?
Look, I think you put it very profoundly. In fact, we have systematized everything. Repetition is what this economy is based on. So we're trying to make things repetitive, and that's why robotics and AI is so powerful. It takes those jobs away.
Yeah.
Right? It's the exceptions. In fact, we have a word in the English language. When someone's really good, we call them exceptional. Right? So you've got to make human beings exceptional. Today in the hotel where I was staying, I had a problem with my internet. The vast majority of the communication could have been done by AI, but the final resolution was done by an expert. Right? So we have to really focus on getting people. We have a cookie cutter model for education right now. Coming back to education, we're training everyone to do the same thing. We're training them to be robots, and I like to say, you train them to be robots, and then the real robots showed up. You shouldn't be surprised if they take their jobs. So you've got to train them to be human. So what does that mean? Problem solving. AI, by the way, is not that smart. Let me just tell you, it's smart.
Not yet, maybe.
Not yet. I think the way AI is conceived today, it lives within the box of the things it's trained on, and it can parrot the next word and the next word, but it's not really thinking. AI can't, it has no conscience, or consciousness, I should say. It has no sentience. AGI, we're not there yet. So in the foreseeable future, we have to recognize what AI can't do and teach people those things. Now, they need to have enough of an understanding of what AI can do as well, so they can master it. It's like a horse, right? You got to ride the horse. So we have to identify those things. For example, I use the problem-solving example, right? But strategy. If I'm a farmer, can AI help me program a drone to get a map of where the moisture is? It's called a NDVI map, right? Yes, AI can help me do that. But how do I get irrigation to the place where it is less irrigated? So the farmer becomes more productive, the yield goes up. So it is that. We cannot ignore AI. We've got to figure out how to do better with AI. AI isn't going, one sort of pithy statement is, AI by itself isn't going to take your job. Someone with AI is going to take your job. So you have to be with AI better than someone else with AI in your field. And that's where you excel.
How do you see AI, and to a certain extent, generative AI, is already changing the workplace? Give me some examples of.
Yes, 10 days ago, I was on the AirAsia. I bought a ticket, which I had to change, and a automaton by the name of Mo showed up. No, Bo. His name is Bo. Bo is an AI agent. Bo said there was a typo on my name. I had to tell Bo that there's a typo on my name. He says, oh, you want a name change? There was no human involved. And I went in and I spoke to Bo and I got the name fixed. Now, it turned out I had another issue which Bo could not handle. And Bo fobbed that off to a human being who communicated with me in chat. So this human being now, with this AI agent called Bo, can handle about 10 times or maybe 20 times more customers than if they were just interacting with me directly. Because then they'd have to talk to me about the tedious stuff. Bo took over the tedium. So here's one example. Any service job, AI is going to make a big difference. Here's another one. You've probably seen those restaurant robots that go around delivering food, right? Just imagine if they could talk. Imagine if they could take your order. Imagine if they could tell you that, I'm sorry, the the nasi lemak is out. Would you like something else? Here are some alternatives. Imagine if they could take your payment, and of course they bring your food. That means that a lot of restaurant jobs are at risk. But the chef's job doesn't go away. The person designing the menu doesn't go away. The person who says that I'm going to cook the omelette differently because the gentleman's order is different isn't going to go away. The tedium, you have to one by one go through every job category and figure out this one at risk, this one 50% automated. And you got to get people out of those roles into roles where they're likely to keep a job.
Well, they say that if we leverage, all these digital, Internet of Things, AI, it can generate like trillions of dollars in wealth and economy and so on and so forth. Let me ask where Indonesia again comes into it with our young people, what we call demographic bonus, and our kind of, we're somewhere, we're not at the bottom, but we're nowhere near the top. How can we leverage, whereas we still have problems of trying to get everybody out of, increase our income, we still have poverty, we still have lots of unemployment, and we still have people that are basically, our workforce, maybe 50%, they only graduated from, junior high school. How can we join the bandwagon so that we're not just spectators in a world where everybody's kind of leaving us behind?
We talked about the problems of AI and the jobs it's going to take away. The world is confronting another more serious problem outside of climate change, and that is the demographic debacle that confronts Europe, North Asia, right? Even India, by the way, the fertility rate is at 2.
The aging society.
Yeah.
Well, Japan, the
Japan,
graying.
of course. Yeah. All of North Korea, Japan, China. Now, South America, in a lot of parts of the world, the population is going down. That means that the demographic dividend, India is 2 right now. India is not at 2.2, which is the replacement fertility rate. So India is going to be fine for some time. But I think that actually young people, empowered, are going to be so important for society and for the world. And as I said, you can invest in the next mine, you can invest in the next highway, you can invest in the next airport. Investing in people may actually fundamentally put Indonesia at a different level from a productivity perspective, contribution to the world. I actually think that there are 2 competing factors here. Population is going down and aging, and the other is AI is taking jobs away and may create more jobs in the long run. You got to be ready for that and to plug the hole in between. So I think Indonesia's biggest opportunity, in my view, is invest in your demographic dividend. By the way, India did that. Right? That's how the whole IT revolution happened. China did that. Of course, now China has a population problem, right? I think Indonesia is the next place to do it because you're actually a middle-income country. It's within reach.
But there is already, we talk about the digital gap, we talk about, the talent gap. In the world, you can see where, these are all the creators, these are all the innovators. How do you see, where can we tap in? How do we close this AI gap?
Well, I think Indonesia needs a Manhattan Project on education. I really do. I think the world needs it, right? But there are not that many young people to educate in other parts of the world. Here you do. I would say this is where you invest, and then you uplift. And if you can uplift, everything else happens, right? I've seen it in my lifetime. We've seen it in your lifetime. You've seen it in a few countries. Indonesia has that opportunity.
We're one of the biggest users of social media, but it's not our platform. So the platform comes out from the Silicon Valley.
Honestly, Desi, these platforms are not rocket science. And especially with AI, you can write code so easily. I actually think it's a great reset point. And I was, this morning I hung out with some MIT and other Stanford, other school alums. And this is a very fertile ecosystem from an entrepreneurship perspective, from a creativity perspective. Also, there's it's Bahasa, right? It's a different language, it's a different culture. So go for the long tail, do things that are local.
So it really is up to us, basically, to pull ourselves up by the bootstraps and just start doing it. Really,
I think so.
And focusing on the right things.
And AI is, a lot of AI is open source. The papers are there, you can see the videos on YouTube, you can read the papers. There is nothing that can stop a country that wants to change right now, especially a country of the size of Indonesia.
And change we must.
Change you must. All of
Okay,
us
let's take
must.
another break, Sanjay. Very interesting conversation, by the way. Jangan kemana-mana dulu. Insight with Desi Anwar akan segera kembali. Masih bersama Insight with Desi Anwar, saya ditemani oleh CEO, Presiden dan Dekan Asia School of Business, Profesor Sanjay Sarma. Banyak sekali ya kita membahas soal strategi untuk menghadapi era AI dan tentu saja kolaborasi sangat-sangat penting, apalagi bila Indonesia ingin mencapai impian untuk Indonesia Emas tahun 2045. And Sanjay, I think we need to continue this conversation at some point because it's important, it's never ending, and this is something that we should all focus on because, well, change, transformation is already underway. So either you change or you adapt or basically you get left behind. So you've mentioned about the future of work. Still many opportunities for us. Let's focus on the potentials. Let's focus on where technology can make a difference in a positive way for us, in, you know, whether it's improving the quality of our life or creating a much more enjoyable quality jobs that is not kind of, you know, slogging it, you know, so give us sort of the upside of technology.
Look, I mean, I am concerned about AI and technology, but I'm also an optimist. I really believe that I can imagine a world actually a few years from now where I demand my food is always organic, where my food doesn't use pesticides that damage the aquifers, where my food doesn't use fertilizers unnecessarily when it's just going to drain away. And I know that a particular farm is run using IoT, which does precision agriculture, which knows when the water that is deployed is only necessary when the plant needs it because the sensors pick it up. I want my food to arrive by a supply chain that does the least emissions. I want my water to have the least microplastics in it. And as we...
And the air clean,
and the
free
air,
from
I want
pollution.
my air to be clean as it was during COVID. I don't want to make a trip if it's not necessary. I want my food to arrive, my deliveries to arrive in a way in sustainable bags. And I want those sustainable bags to be made from either recycled material or from jute that is environmentally friendly,
biodegradable.
that is biodegradable. If society really recognizes what a pleasure and honor and a miracle it is to live on this beautiful planet, and if we recognize that keeping the planet going is our highest mission so that our children and grandchildren can have wonderful lives, and we reorient ourselves and get away from this unicorn mentality where I'm going to sell my company for $1 billion and buy 10 Ferraris. I actually think that is the world, which sounds a little bit sort of utopic, but I think that's what we should aspire for. It's a retraining ourselves to live in harmony
Are
with each other.
countries aspiring to that?
You know,
Or is
Bhutan.
it still at the end of the day about the bottom line, about making as much money as possible and actually creating an even bigger divide between the super godlike rich to everybody else, the 99.999% of us?
I think we have to start living in the empire of the mind, where our tastes are acquired and subtle and interesting, where a gamelan performance is as exciting to us as some silly thing on TikTok. I do think countries can aspire to it. I mean, the Scandinavian countries have long done that. Bhutan is a country that comes to mind.
Yes, they have the gross national happiness, not the gross national product. What about in things like, obviously in healthcare, in diagnostics, in prevention, curative, this is where technology is very helpful, right? We can, we don't have to pay so much to go to the doctor. We can, wear things that, keep remind us to keep healthy and so on and so forth. So this is the optimistic aspect.
I think so. I mean, I think we just have to sort of, relax a little bit. I do some mindfulness.
And innovation is being done in those areas.
For example, I mean, I have an Apple Watch and I have an iPhone, and they actually help me with my mindfulness training. It's a matter of time before you, with your phone, you can take a picture of the food and say, it's a little too much sugar. I'll cut my portion in half.
Which means that every single one of us, I mean, we need to be a different person.
I think so. I think we've sort of been trained, and social media, for example, trains us, unfortunately, more effectively than education systems do, to be a person we're not. I killed my Facebook account in 2007 or something, because I found that I was doing what Facebook wanted me to do, not what I wanted to do. So we have to sort of reclaim our personhoods and our cultural independence and be who we are, and maybe celebrate a little bit, wearing, clothing that, celebrates. Look at me, I'm wearing Western clothes. Well, I'm, come from the US to Malaysia to here, but I love the tunic you're wearing, right? I mean, I would love for us to sort of maybe somehow recenter ourselves and our place on the planet and enjoy things that are not as driven by external factors as they are.
But if we're not still quite there yet in sentient, robots that can, have consciousness and decide for themselves. Not yet. But but it's heading that way. And generative AI is heading to, that the machine learning where they can learn of each other, not from humans, and they may become autonomous. I see the unintended consequences as already happening from our over-reliance on technology, our addiction. Now we have, if you stop your child from crying, you just give them, and they become addicted to it. A lot of time wasted on nothing. So lots of mental health issues, all these, the bullying, the polarization, just all the negativity, or the dark web, and the frauds. What other unintended consequences with continuous evolution of technology to an unknown future that we should be wary of?
Our attack surface is increasing. Let me explain what that means. It's a cybersecurity term, but it expands. It applies more generally. I have half a dozen internet-connected devices: my watch, my phone, my laptop, my iPad, and so on. I have bank accounts in different countries, and they can be hacked. I have concerns because I'm traveling. I don't know, did I leave my phone somewhere, right? We are living in a sort of a world that is, and I'm frankly an example of that, so I shouldn't be, I suppose, preaching. I wish I could shrink my surface a little bit and live with a smaller surface. But the fact of the matter is, as our attack surface increases, as there are more and more points at which we can be attacked, there are more and more malicious gateways to hurt us. The problem with AI is that the bad guys can use it. You see, AI is still hallucinates, still makes mistakes. For the bad guys, there's nothing to lose. They can use AI to probe and look for ways to attack you. They can do a fake video or a fake audio of my cousin saying, "Hey Sanjay, I'm stuck in X country, and send me some money." But I don't know, is it him or is it not, right? Yeah. So I do think that all these technologies are fundamentally changing the ways in which we are vulnerable. And we have more vulnerabilities, we're more stressed, and it's a bit of a spiral. So this is unfortunately the reality, and one of the things that's happening is Europe passed something called GDPR, which is a privacy regulation. That actually helped the whole world, believe it or not. Even the US, we adhere to GDPR in many respects. So I do think that governments need to show leadership to try and tame this craziness. Otherwise, if we're in the rat race, we're all sort of pulled into it to survive. And then we're all sort of more exposed.
But do you see government actually understanding about technology? Because a lot of these things, only maybe the Elon Musk, the Mark Zuckerberg, the Google people, they seem to know a lot of stuff that, well, the rest of us, we don't know much about technology. We're still sort of, we know how to use them, but we certainly don't know how to create.
I know in Indonesia you have people who have a deep understanding of technology. I know them. I met some of them. And I think they need to be pulled in. I think people like yourself, and, I was on a podcast with Geeta Veerjavan yesterday, a very thoughtful gentleman. I think you have technologists, you have ethicists, you have sociologists, you have historians. There needs to be a new network of thought leaders who recenter where we are societally. And I actually think Indonesia absolutely has these people who understand AI, and just as well as Elon Musk does. You know, I think it's within reach.
Okay. Well, our time's running out, but what I want to finish, I'd like to ask you about, you know, we know what computers like. Well, we don't know where they're heading, but hopefully they're not going to be like human in the sense that they have consciousness and self-awareness and, you know, have all our senses. What is it that our strength that we can actually celebrate, and that these are the skills that we should keep and we should hone, and we should say, yes, this is what makes us human. I mean, we have all our five senses. We look at each other in the eye, and we have what's, you know, I feel empathy with you. I mean, if I WhatsApp you, I have no sense of, you know, I can be very rude and I don't feel bad about it, you know. So what is it that we need to?
You know, humans are very unique in that we have this thing called emotion. Not just humans, kittens have it.
Yes.
Right? Empathy, society, a sense of shared purpose, family. I actually think that that is something that AI will very much struggle with. We can't even really define what empathy is. We know something about something called the mirror neuron. But what is kinship? What is a parent-child relationship? Why are you loyal to, why will your parents do anything for you? These are all things I think we're exploring for the first time now in the face of AI. And they're the things that AI doesn't know how to do. When Deep Blue defeated Gary Kasparov, the joke was everyone in the world celebrated. Everything celebrated except Deep Blue because it didn't know what it meant to win, right? Couldn't generate that emotion, doesn't know what joy is. So I don't think AI is even nearly there. And this is where I think we need to double down.
Okay. Thank you, Sanjay. It's been most enlightening. Thank you very much for your insight. Although, like I said, we're now outsourcing our emotions to gadgets, unfortunately. We're also...
I know, it's very sad.
Very sad.
But thank you.
Thank you so much. And I will be reading your book, The Science Transforming How We Learn. I mean, we do need to learn. You know, every day we have to change, we have to learn, we have to transform. It's a different world now.
Yes, indeed.
Ya, demikian insight with Desi Anwar kali ini. Anda juga tentu saja dapat menyaksikan tayangan ini di cnnindonesia.com dan di YouTube CNN Indonesia Insight with Desi Anwar. Sampai jumpa, stay safe, bye-bye.